Each of the columns is a separation of 2 finger breadths. If you look at the paper, you'll see the 2 finger breadths between every column. On the top of the column, from the top line until the top of the parment, you have 3 finger breadths. On the bottom, you have 4 finger breadths.
Wow.
And then you have 42 lines on every column.
Okay.
And every column has an average or a minimum of 30 letters. So what's the reason behind all of these things? The concept of Vav in Judaism is a very powerful concept. Because the truth is, not only does every column of the Torah begin with a Vav, besides 6, every Parsha in the Torah, besides 10, also begin with the letter Vav. The letter Vav is the letter of connection. The Vav means a hook. The Vav looks like a hook or a chute that connects 2 worlds, heaven and earth. And the meaning of Vav is and. And means connection. And to connect God and man. To connect heaven and earth. Interestingly, the Vav, if you put the Vav in front of a word like Hoya, Hoya means it was, right? V'Hoya means it shall be. Right? Yehi means it shall be. Vayihi means and it was. So the Vav changes the present or the past into the future and the future into the past. So really the Vav on one hand represents the here and now. It's the Hoveh, the present, yet it has the ability to transcend the presence and to unite the past and the future together. Torah, even though the Torah speaks to us today, speaks to every human being at all times, yet the Torah is also transcendent. It's beyond time and space. It was written over 3,300 years ago, yet the Rambam says when the Mashiach will come, the Torah will never be changed. So it's a Vav because it's past, it's present, and it's future. The Vav also means connection. If a person wants to connect with God, how do we connect an infinite God with a finite human being? Through the Torah. It's a famous story told by the Rebbe Rashab that there was a famous Hasidic master by the name of Rabbi Meir Pamishlana. And Rabbi Meir Pamishlana every day would go to the mikveh. He would immerse in a ritual bath. And the mikveh was on top of a hill. And every day Rabbi Meir would climb up the hill and go to the mikveh. But even though it was a very, very high hill and a steep hill, and mostly throughout the year it was very icy, without any support, Rabbi Meir was able to walk straight up the hill. And word got around that Rabbi Meir was a mystic, he was a holy tzaddik, he was a miracle worker, he was able to walk up this icy hill standing straight up. There were 2 boys who were a little bit rebellious, and they're part of the Enlightenment movement. They didn't believe in this Kabbalah stuff. And they said, it's not true. We'll show everybody that we can do it also. So they got up early one morning, but Rabbi Meir was about to go up the hill, and they stood on the side of Rabbi Meir, and they smiled at him. Hi, Rabbi Meir, we're here, ready, ready when you are. And Rabbi Meir starts walking up the hill, and they start following him. And after about 3 or 4 yards, the first boy slips, starts tumbling over, grabs onto the other one, he starts tumbling over, and by the time they come down to the mountain, the end of the mountain, both of them have a broken collarbone and a broken arm and a broken foot, and now they're sitting in the hospital. The mayor was also the community chaplain, so he had to go visit, the patients in the hospital. He comes to visit the 2 boys, and he says, how you doing? He says, yeah, Mayor, we're doing terrible. We feel miserable, and we were so embarrassed. Please forgive us for being disrespectful. But we have one question to ask you. Tell us, what's the secret? How do you do it? How are you able to walk up the hill without any problem? So Meir said like this: As man zugebunden von oben, fällt man nicht herab unten. If you are connected above, you don't fall down below. A Jew has a neshama, a Jew has a soul. And this soul, like the letter Vav, is connected above. And therefore, if we are connected above and we actualize this connection, then even though down below we are walking on icy hills, and we have to balance every step of our life, yet we have this additional support from God above to be able to overcome all challenges and all hardships and all shortcomings. So this is the letter Vav that we have in every column of the Torah to remind us of this connection that every Jew has with God. If this connection is not enough, we are told that there are 3 handbreadths on top and 4 handbreadths below. The 3 handbreadths on top represent the 3 fathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and the 4 handbreadths below represent the 4 mothers. That the fathers and the mothers are always looking over us to protect us and to give us guidance and support. So we're not here alone. When we go into something, we want to do a mitzvah, we want to do a good deed, and we see all these challenges that represent themselves before us, we have to realize that we're not here alone. We have God, and God gives us also the additional blessings of our forefathers and our mothers to be able to overcome each challenge.
And the 2? The 2 in between?
Then you have 2 in between. The 2 handbreadths in between represent the written Torah and the oral Torah. But even though we're reading the written Torah, which has specific facts, but to really understand the written Torah, you have to learn the oral Torah, which is the Talmud, which is the Mishnah, which is the Halacha, which is the Kabbalah. And Hashem oiz the amoyitin. God gives strength to the Jewish people. Ein oiz el Torah. What is strength? The strength is the Torah. And therefore, before we do a mitzvah, we study the Torah. Why do we study the Torah before we do a mitzvah? On a simple level is to know what to do, then I do it. So I first study the Torah, I know what to do, and then I perform the actual mitzvah. On a deeper level, on a Kabbalistic level, the reason we study the Torah before we do the mitzvah is because the Torah gives us the physical strength to be able to perform the mitzvah. Every time we do a mitzvah, we want to do a mitzvah, there are challenges. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, the Satan, try to challenge us and try to confuse us, because he knows that one more mitzvah can change the world. One more mitzvah could bring about the ultimate redemption. So therefore, by studying Torah, we now have additional strength, we have additional oiz to be able to overcome all of these difficulties. Furthermore, there are 42 lines on each column. The Baal Shem Tov tells us that just like there were 42 journeys from when the Jews left Egypt until they entered into the land of Israel, every human being has 42 journeys in their life. The first journey is going out of Egypt. The ultimate journey is going into Israel. Egypt, etymologically, means borders and constraints. When you come out of your mother's womb, you're coming out of a very, very tight place. That's called Mitzrayim. And then, ultimately, throughout our life, we accomplish, we grow in good deeds and in Torah knowledge and in charity, and ultimately we come to the land that flows with milk and honey, which is paradise, and that is called Eretz Tova Rechava, a land that is good and a land that is wide. In truth, however, says the Baal Shem Tov, that every day of our life we have 42 journeys. From the moment we awake until the moment we go to sleep, we go through 42 different challenges, 42 different opportunities. And therefore, every column of the Torah gives us that strength to be able to be successful at each of these opportunities and these challenges. And therefore, we have 248 columns of the Torah. 248 represent the 248 mitzvos, the positive commandments that we have in the Torah. So by studying the Torah gives you this oiz, it gives you the power to be able to fulfill all the 248 commandments that God commands us. So you ask the question, what about the negative commandments? Where do we find that? There are 365 negative commandments in the Torah as well. I tell a story that many Jewish people, when you talk about Judaism, have very negative feelings towards Judaism. Because everything in Judaism is, don't do this, don't do that. It's no fun. You can't turn the lights on, you can't eat this, you can't go there, you can't drink this. Everything is don't. The question is, where do all these don'ts come from? So I tell a story that when Moses was going down the mountain, after he received the tablets from God, as we know that God actually gave Moses the 2 tablets that he cut out himself, and they were actually a light blue sapphire. That was the color of the tablets. And Moshe Rabbeinu comes down the mountain and he sees the golden calf. So Moshe Rabbeinu is very upset about the golden calf. What does he do? He takes the tablets and he throws them to the ground and they smash into pieces. You have to realize that at that time, not only the Jewish people were at Sinai, but all the nations of the world were watching this phenomenon. And now all of these pieces get smashed into smithereens. So everybody dodges and they run to grab a piece of the rock. And they come back home and they put on the table all the pieces of the rock. So the other nations, when they start to assemble all the pieces, it says kill, murder, adultery. These are all the commandments that they see. The Jewish people come back and they see loy, don't do this, don't. So it's all about the piece of the rock. It's all about timing. It's all about where you find yourself. But in truth, we know that Judaism is really about expansiveness. And that's why there's a mitzvah every single day of our lives to remember the going out of Mitzrayim, to remember the going out of Egypt. On a halachic level, is because if not, in other words, if God did not take us out of Egypt, so then we would still be in Egypt today. So we have to thank God every day for this. But on a Kabbalistic level, the idea of going out of Egypt every day is because every day we have to go to a higher level. As we said a moment ago, Egypt etymologically means borders and constraints. So every day I have to leave my borders and constraints. So what I did today, and I accomplished today, tomorrow becomes my Egypt. So tomorrow I have to remember to go out of Egypt, because tomorrow I have to accomplish a new thing. Tomorrow I have to be better than today.